let's start out with this. How many people here actually use Puppet right now? How many people here, that's quite a lot. Right, how many people here then are not using Puppet and are here because they're interested in what it is? Well, that's not too bad. It's about 30%, it seems like. All right, now let's get into, for the people who are using Puppet, how many have been using it for a month or more? I'm hoping that's almost everyone, all right. We're going to try to go through, kind of see how much experience we got in the room here. So since say 025, oh, not that many, all right. 26, 27, since 3, not that many have been using. Oh, no new starters on 3. That makes me sad. That was my first release. You'll understand why in a minute. All right, and how many are using Puppet Enterprise? Oh my, all right. All right, it's okay. I still get paid somehow. All right, so who am I? Well, if you saw the other slide, my name is Andrew Parker. I'm the team lead for Puppet and Factor for the open source platform at Puppet Labs. So my history is actually, I'm a software developer. I was hired in to develop Puppet. However, I do actually have a little bit of a background in systems configuration and that kind of thing. I was a system administrator for a short time at the University of Washington, where I got my bachelor's degree. So I used CF Engine. That was interesting. So I used CF Engine for a while. I got into a little bit of configuration management, and then I left university and I became a software developer. And then at one point, I actually went and I did my master's degree, and then I got back into configuration management, where I did my thesis on model checking systems configurations. So that's kind of a bit of my history. My time at Puppet, I started about a year ago. Since I became team lead, I did Puppet 3. We've just released Puppet 3.1. So that's kind of my handiwork. If it's all going wrong, I'm sorry. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the state of Puppet. This is going to be the state of Puppet, the state of Puppet Labs, all of our various things. So let's just kind of walk right into that. So a little bit of Puppet Labs is we're growing pretty quickly. When I started just shortly after the Jan 2012. I was probably employee about 60 or so. We started out the year with 55. And then we started out this year with 110. So we pretty much doubled in a year. We have been increasing how many places our customers are found in. So we started with about 29, now we're at 42, and it just keeps growing. They're all over the place. And because of all this growth, well, we had to get a larger office. We recently moved to a new place. Our headquarters is in Portland, Oregon. We moved about 6 blocks from where we used to be, and we went from 836 square meters. I have to look at the 9,000 square feet. The square meters doesn't mean anything to me. And now we about, what is that? We about tripled it to 2,200 square meters. So it's a nice open office, great place to work. So out of all those places that I said are using Puppet, all those countries, kind of who is it? Well, we got customers doing almost everything, financial, telcos, retail, manufacturing, GE and Boeing, pretty much used to run all sorts of stuff. One thing that's not on here is some place that's using Puppet that's really, really cool is CERN. They gave a presentation at PuppetConf where they talked about how they were using Puppet and all the things that they're doing with it, and that was just amazing. Just a geek fest of, oh yeah. So another thing about it is that, I mean, through all this growth, it's not just our company, it's actually the whole community around Puppet. That's what these Puppet camps are. So this is in January, so just this past month, kind of how much we've got going on in the community. So you can see we got 2 mailing lists, the users and the developers, members, pretty large, quite a few messages going around, great places to get help. There's a Pound Puppet on IRC on Freenode, where you can go and get help as well. There's normally a lot of people there just ready to answer questions. And there is also a thing that we launched recently called ask.puppetlabs.com, which is, well, a great way to help out. So that brings me right into this. So how can you help out? How can you make this community even better? Well, help with our documentation. Documentation is really the lifeblood of people being able to use this. There's a lot to know, a lot to learn. So our documentation's all open. It's on GitHub. You can fork the repository, make a pull request, send it right on over, and our documentation people will put that in. There's ask and answer questions on the mailing list in IRC, and another great one is this ask.puppetlabs.com. It's a Stack Overflow-like site where you can ask questions and then answer them and get reputation and have all that fun stuff. So that is a really wonderful place that we'd really like to see a lot more of, because it makes the answers searchable, so that as you answer questions and as people have questions that come up, they're going to show up much better on search results, and so it just makes it easier for everyone to find those answers. Help out with our bug triage. Puppet being a big system used all over the place, there's lots of things coming in that we need to know about, and helping us figure out what is the real concerns and what are things that people are just having small problems with and they could have had that answered in another manner. That would really help us a lot. We get a lot of stuff that way. And then, of course, I'm a developer. Contribute code. There's lots of code. There's all sorts of things. Or contribute modules. That's another great way to help out. We've got the Forge. Put stuff up on the Forge and help out others in whatever it is that you're using. If you have a new service that you want to be running and no one else has written the module yet, it's a great way to help out. Put together a module, make it easy to configure, and put it out there. I just heard yesterday from the guys who do React that they love the Puppet module that got put together for that. It makes their deployments just so simple. All right, so I think I'll just go through this one really fast. What is Puppet? Since I have a feeling most people know, but for those of you who don't, let's get into that really fast. So this isn't Puppet. This is what we're trying to avoid. We don't want to be doing this anymore, this DIY system management where you're constantly trying to figure out, how do I do this on this system? Really, all you really want to say is this. I want a user called Elmo. I want to make sure that they're in the group of sysadmin. They've got a home directory, and we want to make sure that it's there. We want to manage that home directory. So this is what Puppet does. Puppet is about describing your system in this kind of language. You define that desired state. Puppet checks to see what's been going on the system, does what's called convergence, figures out what's the differences from what you desired, makes some changes, and, well, you end up with a system that's actually what you wanted rather than what just happened to be. So, and then kind of as part of that, we can keep it there. So it's not just bringing it up to that state, it's actually keeping it at that state. So it's not just provisioning a node, it's describing it and then let Puppet keep it going that way. So that's kind of Puppet. It sounds simple, but there's a lot to it. So then we're Puppet Labs. We do most of the development on Puppet. We bring in all sorts of open source contributions, but also we have a product called Puppet Enterprise, which none of you seem to use. That's sad, but maybe I'll convince you to use it now. So what is Puppet Enterprise? Well, it's a GUI on top of Puppet. So you've got all the command line tools. They're all still there. But you've got a GUI on top of it. It's got a bit more integration with provisioning things in the cloud. It's got integration with orchestration via mcollective and a couple things built on top of that. And it's got a compliance feature where it can kind of look at all of your systems, see what's going on, alert you when things are going out of sync from what you wanted. So what's the GUI? Well, this is the GUI. It's a bit of look at stuff. So you can see kind of where do your nodes stand, how many have changed recently, how many have been unchanged, how many have failed, and then you can see over time how has that been happening. So have you had a lot of failures recently? Do you have a pattern of failures that might be interesting to you? And then you can also, once you have an idea of what's been going on, you can drill down into it. You can look into the reports, you can look into everything that's been going on in those nodes. So then there's the live management. This is kind of the orchestration. We have a system whereby you can take a look at the nodes in your infrastructure, take a look at what's actually on there. For instance, I believe right here we're looking at users, probably. Yeah, clone user games. And you can take a look at what is that user, and then you can ask for that user to be cloned onto other systems. And you can even see what would Puppet change before you were actually going to do that. So a bit more hands-on ad hoc management if you really need to. That's built into Puppet Enterprise. We also have the provisioning. It's got VMware built into it, AWS, OpenStack, Google Compute Engine. You can ask for a node to be spun up on any one of these systems. It will get the image going. It'll put Puppet on there. It'll then configure it in whatever manner you told that node to be configured. So, and then there was the compliance. So on compliance, well, I can read the slides. You establish the baseline, you check against it, and then you decide what you want to do based on that. If it's going out of the baseline, is that all right? Do you want to just accept that new state, or do you want to take action and bring your system back into compliance? So there are some other things that we've been doing recently. One is authentication from LDAP and OAuth, so that you can tie access into Puppet Enterprise into your existing access control mechanisms. And there is certificate signing from the GUI. So anyone who uses Puppet knows that you have to let the client send a certificate request, and then you have to sign the certificate request, and that goes back. And so we created a GUI where you can kind of see what's outstanding, click accept or reject, accept all of them, decide, kind of manage a bit more of what nodes are actually getting into your infrastructure. And then, of course, along with that, well, you get our services and support. We've got dedicated service people. We've got professional services where you can get training and help on that kind of thing. There's the Forge, technically not just PE, but it's there as well. And then, well, the training, which I already mentioned. All right. What's been going on in the Puppet universe? So one thing that we're kind of happy about is there's a new book out, an O'Reilly book, called Puppet Types and Providers, which will show you how to write types and providers, which are one of the extension points of Puppet. So that's, how many people know what the types and providers are? Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So the types and providers are the system by which Puppet actually implements those resources. So when you say exec, or you say service, or you say package, that's called a resource. And that thing called service, well, that's called a type. And we have a system where you describe what's allowed there. And then a provider is how you actually implement that type in any particular system. So for instance, for package, we've got providers for RPMs and for apt and for yum and dpackage and MSIs and I don't know what else. There's a lot of them. So this book is about how you can write your own. Because one of the really powerful things in Puppet is you start writing your own and you can really manage your system in really the manner that it should be managed, which is talking more about the resources than any files or executing things. So this was written, it was actually written by 2 Puppet Labs employees, Nan Liu and Dan Bodie. So help them out. It's a great book. We took a look at it. We actually looked at it to make sure that they weren't saying stuff that didn't work. So it should be pretty good. All right, so Puppet 3, as I said, I've been working on Puppet 3. What's been going on it? Well, quite a bit. So if you don't know, Puppet 3 removed dynamic scoping from the language. So hopefully when you're using the variables in language, it'll make a lot more sense now. Dynamic scoping is just a really weird thing that'll blow your mind once you actually fully understand what's going on. We can load extensions from gems. Nice little thing. Full Ruby 1.9 support. We'd been waiting for that for a long time. It took quite a few changes, but we have it now. And Ruby 1.9 actually makes Puppet a lot faster. There's been a lot of good improvements in Ruby to help us out. Plugin sync is on by default. So the agent can just check in, gets all of the plugins. So this is where the type and provider stuff comes in. It will just be able to grab things from the master and use them. And plugin sync is on, that's the mechanism by which it does that. We've added this thing called data bindings for data separation. So how many people know parameterized classes? Yeah, how many people think they're useless? Oh, well, that's good at least. All right, so this makes them a lot more powerful. So this way you can use parameterized classes without having to specify what all the parameters are. So you can just say, use this parameterized class, and then in Hira, you actually specify all the parameters. So it'll just go look it up. You don't have to mess up all of your Puppet manifest with all this extra data trying to get threaded through your whole system. Puppet can actually look it up for you. So that makes things quite a bit nicer. Performance improvements, we'll get to that. All right, better version numbers, I'll just start going through this. All right, so I said the dynamic scoping. So for those of you who don't quite get what dynamic scoping is, I don't blame you. But it's essentially this. You do something like this. You say, I've got a variable and I'm going to use it. And then here, you try to use the variable. Using it like that, that's a dynamic scope. There's nothing around this class that says that variable should be accessible. So that's not allowed anymore. Now, you have to refer to it, or it has to be inside here or other stuff. It just makes things a lot more clear. Here's the data binding, all right? So before you would have had to do something like this. If you wanted this kind of lookup, you would have had to say, all right, I want a class NTP that has a server, and I'll look that up in Hira, and I'll have a default. So now all you have to do is you say, I have a class NTP with a default. And Puppet will actually look up NTP :NTP server in Hira. And Hira can have that data, and you can do your whole hierarchy based on the environment, based on the node name, based on, well, any fact you feel like, all in Hira. And so that will make that a lot nicer. And if Hira finds nothing, we'll just go back to the default. All right. Performance gains. Yeah. So we put out Puppet 3. Actually, I held off the release of Puppet 3 to make sure that we had some performance improvements in it. So we held off on it, and we tuned it, and we tuned it, and we tuned it, and then we released it. And people's servers crashed. No, that's not what happened. This is the CPU load average on the Puppet Master dropping as soon as they released Puppet 3 onto it. So it was a dramatic drop. So the thing could do a lot more. This one is, let me see if I get this right. Oh, yes, I should also point out, the top one is a Puppet Master that has 40,000 managed resources. So quite a good improvement on there. And the second one is the compile and application time on their agents. So even the agents got a lot faster. So the master got a lot more efficient, the agents got a lot faster in applying things. All right, so something that happened throughout the 2.7 series was that we weren't the most clear about what was changing and how impactful that was be. So from Puppet 3, we switched over to Semver. So if you see the last number in the chain change, that's a small bug fix. If you see the second number change, that's some new features, some more bug fixes. If you see the first number change, we've broken things. Be a little more careful. But we're going to try to do that the best we can. It's a big, complicated system. We're doing our best. If we break something, let us know. We'd love to put it out as a patch release where we can put it back into compliance with the rest of the 3 series. So keep on top of that. Help me keep on top of that. I don't want to break stuff. I want to make your lives better for upgrading. So the other thing is also, if you're not moving on to 3, you're kind of getting left behind on lots of changes. So this is where the 2.7 was released. I'll explain the graph shortly. We had the 3 release here, and then the 3.1 release there. We generated this data just before we did the 3.1 release. So what we're seeing here is each one of these lines is a year. Every big box in there is a month, and every lighter box is a day. And the color is, the darker the color, the more change that we actually committed to our code base that day. So you can kind of see that the first period of the 3 cycle, not too much was happening. 2.7 was still getting stabilized. And then kind of from 2012, it picked up. And it just kept going. And it kept going. And it kept going. And it's still going to this day. We're doing a lot of changes. So one of those changes was that we actually started documenting what the Ruby APIs are. So if you're going to ever be working in writing your own custom functions, writing your own custom types and providers, we've now got not only all of our manuals and all of that, which are great, but we've got API documentation. You can go right into the source code or read this up on our documentation site. You can read what all of the developers think is actually public API. And we've now published that, and we can say, ooh, we're not going to break that behavior. If you rely on it, we'll do our best to keep that working. So that brings up one other thing, which is that we're trying to be much more transparent in the way we plan things, what's been going on. So one thing to keep an eye on is in our Redmine for bug tracking. There's this thing over on the side, kind of hard to see, but very important. We need to make it easier to see, but that's another problem. It's called the backlog query. This contains what either we're working on right now as our big ticket items, or what we kind of have planned. So if it says immediate in there, that means that we should be working on that right around now. If it says high, that's kind of what we're thinking of doing next. And next being about a quarter. We're going on about a quarterly iteration. All right, so that's Puppet. What's been going on in the Forge? Well, on the Forge has been growing. The Forge has been growing amazingly. So we started out with 260 modules. We're now at over 750. I think actually when I was last in the office, we keep a little counter going, updated by hand. It's some cards with numbers written on them. I think the last time I saw it, and I can confirm this, it was what, about 800 something? It's over 800 now. Individual modules up on the Forge. So we had about 900 users beginning of last year. We're now at over 2,000. And just people are using them. So the more usage they get, the more confident you can be that, well, these are all useful things. They'll really save you a lot of time. So 2,200 downloads a day now. So how did that happen? Well, one thing that happened was that we've got a dedicated team working on the Forge, adding improvements, making it faster, making it more stable. One of those improvements was just showing download counts. A great way of you figuring out, is this the module you want to use? How many other people are trying to use it? Well, the more downloads, probably the better off you are. Another thing is more visible documentation. They've been trying to make sure that documentation is as clear and concise and understandable and complete as they possibly can. And so they've actually been going through a lot of usability studies, figuring out what is the best way of presenting all of this information. So I see a picture being taken. All right. All right, moving on from the Forge, mCollective. mCollective is one of those amazing tools that we've got in our tool chain that you can do everything with and kill yourself with at the same time. It is pretty cool. So what's been going on with mCollective? Well, mCollective has been trying to make itself a bit more user-friendly. So one thing they've been doing is that mCollective agents, which are the kind of plugins into mCollective, are being distributed as operating system packages. They're a lot easier to get, a lot easier to install. And mCollective itself actually has built into it how to build those packages. So if you want to make your own agents, you can, and distribute it the exact same way that mCollective team has been distributing theirs. So that helps you out a lot, because mCollective has always been thought of kind of as a framework. It's got a couple things built into it, but you do what you want with it, and you also put your own things into it. However, we'll get to that. And then one thing also is these things are continuously being built and deployed out. So whenever they make a change, they push out a new package, and you get that. So they've got pretty high quality on that. So you should be pretty safe on picking up anything that they're doing. And I said usability. They have been working a lot on their documentation, making it easier to understand how mCollective works, how to install it. They've been trying to put together more complete applications, not just the framework that mCollective has always been, but actually applications that can give you really interesting information about your systems. So for instance, this is a graph that mCollective produces from the, and it says right up here, MCO plot resource config retrieval time. Go across my entire system and figure out all of the resource retrieval times, and then give me a nice little histogram of that. I think that's pretty neat. So they're starting to put together a lot of applications like that. In addition, they're just keeping the framework it always was, so you can still build whatever you want on top of it. So now there's PuppetDB. How many people are using PuppetDB? Ooh, all right. How many people are using stored configs and not using PuppetDB? Okay, good. If you're using stored configs and you're not using PuppetDB, I really suggest you switch to PuppetDB. So what is it? How many people know what PuppetDB is? Actually, I might have to explain this. All right, how many people don't know what PuppetDB is? All right. PuppetDB is a system for centrally holding on to your catalogs where you can query information about them. It holds on to exported resources. It, well, holds on to all of that information. It's a really, really fast replacement for the active record stored configs that you might have been warned away from that will bring your infrastructure to a grinding halt if you tried to use them. PuppetDB won't. PuppetDB will actually make things a lot faster. Plus, it will have all this information that then you can query and just do analytics about your systems. So, speaking of querying, what have they been up to recently? Well, they released PuppetDB 1.1, which had better querying capabilities. So you can query for facts, you can query for nodes that have certain facts, you can do subqueries where you say, I want all of the nodes that have a fact like this, and you can do regular expressions on those queries as well. They can now store reports in PuppetDB, so all your report storage doesn't have to go to files on disk, it can actually now go into PuppetDB. One thing that they're still working on is a query engine for the reports. They've got an experimental one, but that's kind of subject to change. They'd really like some feedback on what's the best way of doing this, because there's a lot of information in reports that they really need to make accessible so that all of you can understand what's going on in your infrastructure. And the pretty picture is, if you install PuppetDB, you get this wonderful pretty picture of everything in your infrastructure changing over time as it graphs it. It's really cool. It's fun to just sit there and watch it. So other things that we've got is training and certification. Well, I think that was recently done here at Spotify. We just did a training course here. So you can see, yes, we have training in Sweden. We have training all over the place. So these are all places where you can get training in Puppet and Puppet Enterprise. I don't know if this is fully up to date, Ralph. Are there more places that aren't on here? Or that's all we got right now? Okay, so this is all countries where we have active partners, but those partners might cover other countries that maybe aren't listed on here. If you can get Ralph into some wonderfully exotic place, he would love you. No Siberia, though? All right. So what kind of training do we have? Well, we've got kind of two different tracks for our training and certification programs. Oh, yes, we've got certification now. The certification programs are not out yet, as far as I understand, but we're still putting them together. Oh, they're out. Oh, I'm behind in my information. So you can get Puppet certified now. So the two tracks that we've got the system administrator track, which is what most of you would know and understand, and kind of like how do you administer systems with Puppet, how do you get better at that. You can get certified in it, and then there's the continuing education. And then there's the developer track, which of course starts the same way. You can't develop on Puppet if you don't have any clue what it does. But it gets you into how do you write custom functions, custom types and providers. How do you actually extend Puppet with all of the various points that we've got? And then you can get certified as that as well, which is a very interesting thing to do. All right. Any questions? Please have questions. No? Nothing? All right. PuppetDB, will it support any other database backend? So right now it supports Postgres. I don't believe they have any plans at the moment for supporting anything other than Postgres. The Puppet Enterprise right now was not using Postgres, but I believe they were going to migrate to Postgres so that we have one database. I think there's some possible interest in Oracle, but there's no concrete plans for that right now. Is the question, why doesn't it support MySQL or something? No. Oracle? Oh, yeah. So I think they'd really like the feedback of how many people would be interested in Oracle. So, yeah. Any? Oh, all right. Can you explain a bit about your plans for supporting Windows? The plans for supporting Windows. All right. What would you like to know about that? I'm just wondering how your plans look. I'm just wondering.
So I was just wondering about your plans for different services that you would support in a Windows operating system environment.
So let me see. So at the moment, we have package providers for Windows. You can install MSIs and exe packages. Just actually last week, one of the developers on my team, Josh Cooper, which is our main Windows guy, was putting together a PowerShell provider, so you can write PowerShell scripts. It's not done yet. He's still working on it. I think he'd like some feedback on it, so I think he actually asked for some on the mailing list, so if you find his message, reply. His module's on the Forge, too, if you want to try it out. Let's see, what else has been going on with Windows? There is a lot to do on Windows. I realize that.
I know.
One interesting thing about Windows is it's a completely different model from Unix. So there's stuff around services. We're working to get mCollective on Windows. I don't know when that's going to be done, but that is something that's being worked on. Let's see, what else has been going on there? There's quite a bit. I think there was going to be looking at getting a chocolatey package provider, which makes installing packages for Windows just a lot simpler. It makes it a lot more Unix-like with the packaging systems they've got. What else has been going on there? Getting the module tool working on Windows is one of the things he was doing. Yeah. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? I can't have covered everything. I know I didn't cover everything. There we go.
Yeah, does Puppet provide caching as well? I mean, offline, can we have it, clients still manage themselves offline?
Can you have clients manage themselves offline?
Yeah.
Well, if they don't have access to the master, they'll fail in contacting the master and they'll use the cache catalog. At the moment, that's kind of the best we can do. You can go to masterless mode. You can use purely Puppet apply and have no master. And then in that case, there's nothing but an offline style. Is there any particular thing that you're having problems with that?
Basically, we are using Puppet for managing the clients, not the servers, but the desktop, the systems that users are using Ubuntu. So they are coming on and they are going on. So, I mean, we want some kind of a way where it is stored on the client machine, and whenever it comes to the LAN, it takes the update automatically.
Yeah, so I don't think we have any plans at the moment for doing anything specific for that. I may be corrected. Nope, I'm being told I am right. I would say that most likely the best thing to be doing in that case is masterless. Yeah, where it's just always in an offline mode, so whenever it runs, it should be fine. That may not always be doable, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Surely there are other questions. Don't let him off the hook quite so easily. He is the engineering lead for the open source. Lots of stuff we can talk about.
There's another one over here.
Here, I got it.
Yeah, so me again. You got a huge contribution from VMware last week. I think it was like about $30 million something. Can you just quickly go over what you're doing together with VMware as well?
Oh my, okay. Let's see if I can do this. So the main thing with VMware is that we're going to be doing integrations with VMware products. I think there's not really many specifics of exactly what it's going to be, as far as I understand. It's just they want a lot of integrations. They want to make sure Puppet really works on their systems, can be used for provisioning in the vCenter and with vSphere and that kind of thing. I have to admit, from my team's perspective, we haven't seen too much recently. But I imagine there's going to be lots of really interesting things going on. And Dawn might have something more to say.
Yeah, I'm going to add a few things to that. So the way it works, it was sort of a standard VC investment. So a lot of big companies do they have VC arms where they do venture capital investments in startups. This was one of those. So we're actually not tied to specifically just doing stuff with VMware. Yeah, good point. So the money that we're getting from VMware is invested in our company. It's not only specifically to do things with VMware. Yeah. With it comes certain things. So we have agreed to do certain things with them on product and marketing. But we're still going to be doing stuff with all of the other virtualization providers as well. This doesn't lock us into VMware in any way. Some of the things that we're spending that money on are hiring. So we have a whole bunch of positions open. So if you're, if you are looking for a job, relocating from the EU is a little bit harder for us. But if you know any people in the US who want to come work in Portland, we're doing a ton of hiring. We have something like 16 or 19 engineering recs alone open, not to mention all the other positions that we have open in marketing and other areas. So we're going to use that money for a lot of things. We are going to use it specifically for some things with VMware, but that is not entirely what the money is for.
I should say one thing that my team has seen from it is we've been able to hire people to help out and stay on top of community contributions, get better feedback and that kind of thing on that.
Yeah, we're spending a lot of the money on hiring engineers and making the product better in general, overall, not just related to VMware.
Yeah, a little bit on the same theme. You also mentioned that you were developing for OpenStack. In which area of it is it? It's already developed. In there, what type of deployment is possible with Puppet in that area? It's not just below service; it's going higher up in the.
So I believe one of our professional services people probably knows a lot better than me.
So there's a OpenStack module basically for setting up the environment. We also have a cloud provisioner face for it that actually spins up new nodes. We have some community glance providers. I think there's a Nova configuration type of provider, quite a few things effectively, and you grab them on the Forge. So.
Yeah. Now you're asking questions that I can't answer.
Hello. So how does Puppet differ from CF Engine 3?
How does Puppet differ from CF Engine 3? Ooh. Oh man. I will be completely honest with that, and I'm not exactly certain. I need to take a look at CF Engine 3. I used CF Engine 1, so it's slightly different, I imagine. No, so I think one of the ways that we differ quite a bit is just our catalog is a bit different. CF Engine 3. You know what? I'm not even going to try. Come and talk to me afterwards if you would like to know, and you can tell me.
There's a question there in the back.
Oh.
Is Puppet Enterprise, is that a managed service like Chef has, or do you have, what's the subscription like?
So it is a subscription model for licenses, but you host it yourself. It's all in your own infrastructure. We don't have a managed service. We have no Puppet as a service as it stands right now. Oh, there we go.
It's again the same question like Jeff. What is the Ansible and Puppet differs?
How does Ansible and Puppet differ? Right, so I think the way they differ for the most part is, well, Puppet has a different, there's the obvious differences. We have a different language. We have a language that's not YAML files. I think the other way that we differ is that, if I understand correctly, Ansible actually sends those files over to the individual nodes and executes them there, a little bit like Chef. Whereas Puppet, everything is executed on the master. We figure out exactly what's going to need to happen, and then we create a description of what exactly the state needs to be, and then we send that over to the agent, and the agent figures out what the changes are that need to be made, which means that we have that complete description. And this is one of the things that PuppetDB is getting interesting for, is since it's got the catalog, you can start looking at that catalog and start looking at differences between catalogs and kind of understanding, well, what resources were you expecting to change, correlate that with the reports that are coming back, and see what was actually changing. So we can start making a distinction between drift that happened on the system and the intent for the change that was going on. Whereas I believe Ansible probably can't do that.
Do you have any plans around unit testing modules in an easier or different way than what's going on right now?
So more easier or different from something like RSpec Puppet, are you thinking? Or
do you have a plan for RSpec Puppet?
So RSpec Puppet is a community project, which we just try to make sure that they've got the capabilities for continuing that. There's been some talk around maybe trying to come up with some sort of integration testing for modules, because at the moment, testing the module itself, where you just produce a catalog and make assertions about the catalog, probably isn't the most interesting thing, because it's really about, does this module set up Apache correctly so that you've got the correct vhost and all of that. So we've been thinking about it. We don't have any concrete plans at the moment for trying to do that. However, there are lots of projects out there that you can try out. In fact, just the other day, the test kitchen, which is actually a Chef, originally created for Chef, has been extended. I saw a guy working on it the other day to actually use Puppet as well. So you can test out your things in the test kitchen, where it fires up a virtual machine, applies the manifests, and then you can make assertions about what it got. So that kind of thing would be pretty nice to have. But no. Over here. Mm-hmm. Yes. In fact, the AWS stuff was, I believe, our first integrations where we could control EC2 instances and things like that. So that's been around for quite a while. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cloud Stack. I don't know. No. Not sure if anyone's working on it, but so no. There are so many of them. Oh, there's one over here.
I'm wondering about package provider for Mac OS X packages.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing something with Monkey.
Actually, I was going to say our professional services people are actually the ones who give us a lot of our Mac stuff.
Yeah, one of our professional service engineers, Gary Lariza, is working with the developer of Monkey on potentially a provider. The problem is that the models, frankly, the developer of Monkey doesn't think that a provider, package provider with Puppet is a good idea. So that's one part of it. Oh, but there's some stub code that was basically put out there, but there's not an official offering quite yet. So in other words, you could get it working on your own, but there's not anything that is actively being developed just because of the philosophical differences between the two.
So it's always open to someone picking it up. Actually, I should say that on the OS X front, the latest release of Puppet 3.1 had quite a bit of work for getting Puppet to work with some of the newer OS 10 versions. So I know that Apple had changed a few things, and some of our providers stopped working correctly. So a lot of fixes have gone into that. So 3.1 should have a lot better. I believe it was the user support, and I think maybe service support has been fixed up. Yeah, the LaunchD stuff. Yeah, so the user provider. So users and services on Mac OS 10 have been improved quite a bit in the latest release.